Hello and welcome to the Blue Water Running Podcast. I'm your host, Maren, and this podcast features and celebrates the achievements of high school and collegiate cross-country and track and field athletes from the Blue Water area of Michigan. The podcast is back, and our episode today features a repeat guest, Noah Verlinde. Noah first came on the pod last December in episode number 30 of season 1 to talk about his cross-country and track experiences at Saginaw Valley State University and his trip to California to race in the NCAA D2 championship event for the first time. Since then, Noah graduated from SVSU this spring, joined his father in the family business at Verlinde Insurance Agency, and has turned his running pursuits to further distances, tackling his first 26.2 miler at the Bayshore Marathon in Traverse City over Memorial Weekend. Not only did he finish, but he was the runner-up, taking second in a blistering time of 2:21:30, which is a 5:23 per mile pace, and easily hit the Boston Marathon qualifying time of 2:55. The winner of the Bayshore Marathon is a pro runner for Gazelle Sports Elite, so Noah has dipped his toes into elite territory, only 5 minutes off an Olympic marathon trials qualifying time in his very first ever attempt at the distance. Noah also won the Volkslaufe half marathon in Frankenmuth by 10 minutes, taking first in 1:09:12. We'll chat with Noah about his transition from a collegiate runner to a marathoner and what his long-distance running future holds. Yeah, well, thanks for coming back on the podcast. I'm excited to talk about this next phase in your running because you've been tearing it up.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you inviting me to come back. This is very excited to do that.
Yeah, well, let's start by congratulating you for your marathon finish at Bayshore. Holy smokes, talk about a ridiculously fast debut. So let's talk about that. Now, did you go into that race expecting that you would run that fast?
I went back and forth with it. Just, I was sandbagging a little bit and just putting like a pretty attainable goal out there. I was like, oh, I'll just go try and run like sub 2 hours and 30 minutes. Like, I think that'd be a pretty good goal. And then, of course, people get talking in your ear and kind of gas you up to think that you can run a lot faster than that. So the benchmark was if I could run sub 2:25, I thought that would be a really great day. But the main thing I was focused on the day was just it's going to be a really challenging thing, and I'm really excited to tackle a new challenge. So it was certainly that. I got that, and the result just ended up following that up. So was really happy about it.
Now, were you with the lead pack or in the lead from the very beginning? I mean, or did you kind of work your way up and start working from there?
Yeah, it was really hectic, honestly. So I underestimated how overwhelming like the marathon crowd could be.
Mm-hmm.
We were not far from the hotel. Our hotel was not far from the starting line. So I went with a group and they were very lax with when they wanted to get there. And I was a little bit less lax. And we probably got there with like 15 minutes to go. And, as runners do, I had to use the restroom. So went and used the restroom and then could not find the group. They had all my stuff. They had my bib. They had my shoes, my gels.
That's stressful.
Yeah, so there's 5 minutes to go, and I was running back and forth trying to find them. And long story short, I was like, well, I came here to run a marathon, so whether that's with a bib or without a bib, we're going to do it. And thankfully, they were there. So all that's to say, I was able to make my way up to the front of the start line and everything. And I ended up with the like elite group that they had brought in from the beginning, which was not necessarily my original intention, but found myself in that group and figured it'd be better than just running on my own and just rolled with it. And it was honestly one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life, just kind of enjoying the miles, like pushing one another in the group to just make it to the next mile, and miles were clicking off pretty easily. So it was kind of surprising, but yeah, I was up there pretty much the whole time.
So was there a moment where you thought, oh, this is really happening, I'm in the front? I mean, did that ever hit you like, oh?
Yeah, pretty much from the get-go, honestly. I kind of expected hopefully that I would be off the lead pack a little bit and then, kind of make my way up, because the one thing I didn't want to happen was have a very miserable experience the second half because I went out too aggressively, and that's a tendency that I have had throughout my running career. So basically from mile 1, when I found myself with that elite pack, I was kind of just like, well, we're here. I mean, might as well just roll with it. And the energy in the crowd and in the group was really good. We were chatting pretty much the whole time, and I got to know a lot of the guys, introduced myself, and they introduced themselves and made some friends. So but pretty much every mile from mile one was just like, wow, we're really doing this, and it's really not getting any harder. So might as well just keep on rolling with the punches.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming at some point your body did know, okay, I am running a marathon. And there had to have been some miles that might have been a little tougher than others. So, where did you feel was the most difficult, if there was a difficult part of your race that you kind of had to work through?
Yeah, there's 2 points that I definitely can look back on and think of as the hardest times in the race. And one of those was at mile 20. It was me and one other guy who had broken away from the pack, and kind of backtracking a little bit from the get-go. One runner decided to take it out very, very quick. And at the halfway mark, he was about 4 minutes ahead of the pack that I was in. So he was crushing it. And so at halfway, me and this one other runner decided to break away from the other group, and we were just rolling together. But 20 came along, and I was clipping off pretty good mile splits, and he was starting to drop me a little bit, and I was conscious of those last 6 miles, and like I should probably back off just a little bit. So that was the first one where I kind of questioned if I could make it to the finish line, just because you never really know at mile 22 and
Hmm.
23 onwards. But
Hmm.
um, ended up being I was still able to hold a pretty consistent pace. But the hardest mile by no comparison was definitely mile 25, where I ended up making a wrong turn, and I kept going
Oh,
straight when you were supposed to
oh
turn.
no.
And thankfully, there was a great group of volunteers about a quarter mile up the road that were running towards me, yelling for me to stop. So came to a dead stop, started
Oh,
pointing in a couple different directions to figure out which way I needed to go. And then I heard one of them faintly say yes when I pointed in a direction. So I turned around, started running again, and then had to finish it up from there. So that was it was not easy to go from dead stop to back to pace again, that's for
no,
sure.
especially at that point in the race,
Yeah.
because once you stop, it is really hard to start again,
Yeah, I was certainly ready to be done at that point. So
I'm
having
sure.
to stop and then realize, oh, I still have another mile was, yeah, not a great feeling, but hey, we got it done.
Yep. Well, I mean, think about you probably would have run even faster, obviously. So to go
Yeah, I
that
know.
fast with that.
Yeah, I make jokes with my friends. It's like, oh, I was a 220 guy for sure. I didn't, but no, it's, the time was what it was, and I was still super happy with the result,
Yeah.
regardless of that happening. So can't always be perfect, right? There's always got to be something you can do a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what is something about the marathon that you didn't really understand or you didn't expect until you were physically in the moment doing it?
Yeah, there's two things. One was just how the community that surrounded the event. I know each marathon is going to bring its own kind of excitement, but Bayshore was an atmosphere like no other, where the streets were lined with people, and it was, they were all hyping the runners up, and the runners themselves were actually engaging with the crowd too. And I think that just added to the momentum that continuously built mile by mile, and it made it feel less of like a serious, like, track can be pretty serious, where there's not a whole lot of chit chat before and during the race especially. But um on the roads you have so long to go, so you're kind of just hoping to get the best out of everybody in the group, and you're chatting along the way. And that was the other thing that was very surprising to me, was just how I guess considerate the other runners were about just kind of asking how you were doing, learning a little bit about people in the group, and then working together to get the best out of everybody on the day. So those two factors were just so amazing, and it has me excited to continue, just really competing in those kind of events.
Yeah, and the scenery is beautiful too. I don't know how much you were looking at the scenery since you were running so fast, but it is a beautiful course.
It was gorgeous. Yeah, going out and back on the peninsula was very, very, very beautiful, and it made the miles click off pretty quickly. So that was nice. Nice
Yeah, that
attitude.
helps. And you had
Yeah.
good weather. I didn't know what the weather was that day for you.
It worked out pretty good. So it was, not great spectating weather. It's probably like mid 40s and overcast, but for running, when you're running 26.2 miles, I couldn't have asked for better. It was very comfy, and maybe a little cold for the first couple minutes, but after that, it was very comfortable. So couldn't have
Yeah,
asked for better.
yeah, that's good. You don't want it to be hot.
No.
I've done it once. I did it a few years back with my brother-in-law, and we just did the half.
Mhm.
But we had, I mean, monsoon rains the morning of,
Jeez.
like you could not even see in front of your windshield wipers. So we had to stand outside in the pouring rain to get on the shuttle that takes you to the start from the school. I don't know if they still do it that way.
Mhm.
Um, So by the time, and then, you're on a bus, which all the windows are fogged up
Okay.
and everyone's sweating. And then we get off and we're standing in the rain to wait for the start. And then right when the race started, the sun came out. So everyone was already soaked. Your
Ooh.
shoes are wet, your socks are wet. And then the weather was great. But um, there was a little snafu at the gear check. So
Oh,
my brother-in-law drove. He put his key in his gear bag and then checked it in. And then when we got done with the race, we waited in line. There was nobody in there but one person that was handing back the gear check bags. And, there's thousands of them by number, and it's just a huge tent filled with them. And so we waited in line for an hour and a half. And it was getting to the point where we were like, we're just going to go in there and find this bag because it was ridiculous because we couldn't leave without the key.
right.
So lesson learned, I've always tied my key into my shoes for that reason, so that I don't have to wait if my bag is lost or whatever. So yeah, that was the
There
only
you go.
downside to our Bayshore experience. But
Yeah, I feel like you just the first one is just going to be such a learning experience with whether it's something like that with just like
yep,
the craziness of the logistics of trying to
yeah,
figure out when you finish and when you start or the race itself. Like there's a lot to learn and I was in a similar sentiment. I finished the race and I was just freezing cold because you're all
mm-hmm,
sweaty and it's not that warm out and
mm-hmm.
could not get to my bag quick enough and there were just thousands of people all fighting for a little bit of space. So it was yeah, definitely an interesting experience.
Yeah, and that's nothing like New York,
Oh
Boston,
yeah.
Chicago. I've done Boston and Chicago, and it is just insane. Like it's an entire city just for the gear tent. I
Yeah, I
mean,
can't even imagine.
yeah, so if you do a big major marathon, it's a whole new world for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, what did you eat after you were done? I mean, did you have a good post-marathon meal that you celebrated and enjoyed?
Yeah, I did. We went out to this really nice local like diner and they had I ordered the biggest pizza you could get and finished the whole thing and then had a nice glass of wine. So it was
Yeah.
perfect way to cap it.
Yep. That sounds about right.
Oh yeah.
All right, so let's talk training. We kind of went with the race first, and we'll go back and talk about your training. So you recently graduated from SVSU. You talked in the last podcast we did about how you were a high mileage guy in college, and you were peaking about 90 to 95 miles a week, and mentioned that your body just responds well to that, and you were able to handle that type of training. So obviously, that's carried well into your marathon distance training. So was the radar kind of, hey, let's hit the marathon eventually? Or was this more a shift in your running goals that came about on its own?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I knew after college that I was just going to continue to run and run a lot. Like I think I mentioned in the prior podcast that it's really just the best part of my day, and the longer I can be out there, the better. Just being by myself, being able to just really work through thoughts. So I knew I would always run and kind of continue that high volume, but with that comes just, I guess getting into the marathon because it's something you do when you get out of college. So I wouldn't say that the marathon was something that I was like gearing for and it was this big goal to do. It was really just something that naturally came out of, well, I really enjoy to do this, so I might as well keep that competitive nature that I did enjoy from college and do it in the marathon. So yeah, it came really naturally and I still try to hold that high volume and, really enjoy it, but it's also nice to kind of take a little bit of a step back. And if there's days where life just gets really busy, or work is a priority, family might be a little bit more of a priority, then I'm not stressing because there's nothing like it's not a not that college was a job, but it's a little bit less of a
Hmm.
priority in my life now where I can just really enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, you're running on your terms now, not your
Hmm.
school's. Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
Well, did you have to increase your mileage significantly, or I mean, was it not that much? Are you over 100 miles a week?
Not quite.
Okay.
I had 1 week of over 100. I think I hit 103. But the rest of it was really right around like probably that same 90 to 95
Okay.
mark. So yeah, it was pretty consistent from college. It was I was pretty conscious of the fact that I had been running since May of the year before. So it'd been a whole year of just training and doing very
Hmm.
high mileage. So the body was not necessarily super fresh or anything like that. So to with 3 weeks left from when I finished my last collegiate race to the marathon, I wasn't going to get much out of trying to push for these crazy numbers just for the sake of numbers. So I really just
Hmm.
tried to do what felt comfortable and have fun doing it.
And you were already doing that. So that's an important
Right.
point to
Right.
make. I mean, if you're doing marathon training and you're not running that consistently, don't think you have to. I think my highest ever mileage wise when I was doing my training was
Mm.
65. I
Right
followed
on.
the Hanson's program where
Yeah,
it's, yeah, progressive load, and that worked for my best time, but I didn't train that way every time. And
sure.
you don't have to run, that far if you're, I mean, obviously elites are running a lot farther, but I didn't.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the cool part about kind of being done with college is, with the less structured schedule of, there's not like a date marked on the calendar of something that's specific that you were trying to build and mini peak for. You can really experiment with different training plans and different things and see what sticks and what doesn't. And there's not a whole lot to lose. So that's been something I've been trying to incorporate is just trying things that I've never done before. And that's been really, really exciting to kind of learn some new things.
Yeah, I bet. That's the fun part about it.
Yeah.
Um, Now, are you doing any two-a-days or do you just stick to one a day?
I do 2 days a lot of the time, with when I'm up in Saginaw, because I kind of bounce around from back home in the Macomb County area and
Mm-hmm.
up here, just still having a residence up here. After work, once you clock out at around 4:30 or 5, I have the freedom to do what I would like after. So sometimes there's some house projects to do, but if there's not, I can't think of a better way to spend the evening than just kind of decompressing, going out for a run, enjoying the weather, getting some fresh air after sitting all day. So I have done 2 days. I try to do two workouts. I've been experimenting with that too to see how that works, and that's been very fun. And my body's responded well to that too. So yeah, I do try to do some 2 days here and there.
Mm-hmm. How often do you have to switch shoes?
Pretty often. Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
often.
I bet.
I think I have a rotation of three right now that I kind of just bounce between depending on the day. And yeah, they're already getting pretty worn out. So I'd probably
Mm-hmm.
say like I make it uh, maybe like a month and a half or 2 months before I have to rotate all three again. So yeah, it's a pretty expensive sport, but
Yeah.
you can find ways to get, I guess, not cheaper shoes, but discounts and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. And
Yeah.
so
Well,
yeah.
that's something that Camden learned as a collegiate athlete.
Yeah.
Rotating shoes makes them last longer and just
Oh
being
yeah.
more conscientious. And when I interviewed the Romeo coach, he mentioned that he felt that shoes do not last as long as they used to
No.
because the foam is different. I mean, it's probably better overall, but um, yeah, he was thinking like 300 miles. So for you, that would be like 3 weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the harsh reality of it. But
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I said I don't push it past those sometimes, just because I'm stubborn and like the ones
Mm-hmm.
that I have, and maybe don't
Mm-hmm.
feel like going to the store. But
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't blame you because
yeah,
I know I couldn't afford to change
yeah,
my shoes every 3 weeks.
exactly.
So, all right. Well, you already mentioned this. This is kind of funny, but a quote that I pulled from our last episode was I love being out there for as long as I can. It's an outlet where I can spend my time and be in my head and go through really necessary things. So, do you think that your previous deep mileage base, your ability to handle that, and your enjoyment of those long runs, as you mentioned in that quote, lent themselves really well to making you kind of an ideal marathoner?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think I might have also mentioned this in the previous podcast that running is the things you learn and the things that you can kind of encounter the obstacles, I guess, while running are very synonymous with life. Like there's long periods of times and days where you really don't feel like getting out the door. And I've found that with my professional life too, just working a professional job now that there are just days that feel mundane and you're not excited to go to work as much as you try to hype yourself up. But it's about just kind of weathering those storms and realizing that like there's something to gain from having those kind of feelings and emotions going into it. So, having that big long base or I guess long career in running where I've gotten accustomed to running for long durations of time and have been able to be in my own head and figure out where my mind likes to wander is super beneficial. And I've learned to love running for what it is. And that's just being able to push myself to be the best I can be every day. And that's something that I try to translate in my own life outside of just running too. So the fact that I just try and prioritize that, I think makes it the transition like to the marathon, which can be a very scary distance, 26.2 miles of just pain, and you're putting yourself through a very uncomfortable situation. But I just love the idea of figuring out how good you can be on the day and not trying to, prioritize an outcome, but instead just focusing on what it is at its heart, which is just having fun running. So,
Well, it's good to hear you say that because a lot of people find that particular approach difficult.
Yeah.
They don't see the fun in it. And there's so much things you can enjoy about running that sometimes get left in the wayside of the training and the nutrition and all that. So yeah, I like hearing that. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any training partners? I mean, I'm assuming you primarily train solo, but I don't know. Do you have running buddies that help you out?
Yeah, thankfully, since I'm still up in Saginaw, there's still a lot of guys on the team that live up here over the summer. So there's times when our schedules can overlap, whether that be, after work, and some guys are early risers, just like I am. So we can log some miles together and even work out together from time to time. But I've been learning to navigate kind of that, um, being like autonomous by myself kind of thing. I think that's something I relied on a lot in college is I really got a lot of enjoyment out of just spending time with my closest friends that became like an extension of family to me. And that's not always going to be the case. I'm not going to be in close proximity to these guys always or have people to help me get out the door like that. So, really trying to kind of take ownership over, like I'm on my own schedule. I have stuff that I need to do and priorities that I need to really focus on. So if that means running by myself, it might be a little bit harder, but let's tackle that challenge with an open mind and just be excited about it and try and keep, again, just like that excitement for being able to go out the door and having the opportunity to run on the day rather than, oh, I like only will run if there's somebody else I can run with. So,
Yeah, that was the biggest adjustment for me leaving the structure of college
mhm,
athletics. I
mhm,
didn't have a built-in training partner
mhm.
or partners, and that whole camaraderie and atmosphere was really hard right away to adjust. But after I got used to that, now it's harder for me to run with people because I got so used to running alone. So it's a weird dynamic, but
No, that's a really good point. There's days
mhm,
where, I mean, with how much mileage I'm doing and trying to put in some pretty quality days as well, there's days where I'm pretty battered and I'm kind of just going on a time on feet run. And, some guys, everyone has their own pace at what they feel good at. And, that takes a little bit, maybe I overexert myself a little bit if I try to run with some other guys, or maybe vice versa. I'm feeling good and they're not. And,
mhm.
I can maybe one step them and that makes them a little frustrated with me. But yeah, it's a good point. It's an interesting dynamic there.
Yes. Well, where do you do most of your long runs?
Yeah, so it's changed a lot. I've been bouncing around the state a lot this summer, just with going home or trying to go on some fun vacations and enjoy the summer with some friends. So most of the time when I'm up in Saginaw, we meet, just around here and have some local routes that we do. But we're also very close to Frankenmuth, which is a great running location. They have some rolling hills out there, which is really nice. And Midland is not too far as well, and they have a great rail trail out there that's very scenic and we like to go to. But I've been all over the place, Lake Orion down near the Macomb County. I guess it's more Oakland
Hmm.
County township area is beautiful out there with the dirt roads and the woods and the hills and everything. So I try to get down there every once in a while too. So it varies and it keeps running interesting to just switch up where you're running rather than doing it in the
Hmm.
same spot every single day.
Yeah, agreed. I did a lot of my long runs at Stony Creek,
Yeah.
so you probably know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, what have you had to tweak from training for cross country and track to better adapt your body to the marathon distance?
Yeah, well, in cross country and track, when I was in college, there were a lot of quality days in the week. It was probably 5 out of the 7 days where we were adding some sort of, whether it was speed or it was a long tempo or it was a VO2 workout. Like there were just 5 days out of the 7 that were all quality. And then when you're trying to match that with doing high quantity as well, it can be really, really hard to recover appropriately and be able to hit solid days consecutively and consistently. So what I've tweaked a little bit is just doing a little bit less quality and more so just focusing on, there's a couple days a week where they're flashier, I guess you can say. They're nothing crazy, but they're maybe a long tempo run or two tempo runs in a day. But the rest of the days are really just about logging miles and enjoying those miles. So incorporating a lot more recovery into the week rather than feeling it like every day has to be have some sort of quality in it has definitely been an adjustment that I've been having and I've been experimenting with maybe getting closer to more finding that right balance of quality versus quantity and kind of also just enjoying the quantity more so at times. So yeah, I'm still learning.
Hmm. Well, you also mentioned when we talked last about how important it was to stretch, to rehab, foam roll, et cetera, recovery. So I'm assuming this training has probably amplified the need for that, intensive focusing on those auxiliary parts of your training. So is there anything you've added that maybe you didn't do before, or you've just kind of ramped it up in that regard?
This has probably been the area of my running what that has maybe suffered the most, just having transitioning into, I was all in when I was in college and that was okay because I only had so much time to be able to be fully committed to this sport and trying to be the best that I could be. Now it's a little bit different where I'm trying to figure out what that next thing is for me. And right now it's career and family that I really want to invest a lot more time in because, I invested so much into running and would really like to give back to those areas of my life. So, that kind of leads to a little bit more of a rushed lifestyle. I have to kind of fit running in to an extent. So I account for getting the running in. And if I have to stretch later, I have to stretch later. It doesn't always happen at the end of the day. So, I still try to incorporate it as much as I can, whether that's in the middle of the day while I'm at the office or working from home. I go for a walk or just get up and stretch a little bit so that way I can still get that in there. But it looks a lot different now, and it's an area that I really have been just trying to figure out where it fits in best and how I can kind of just get the best out of everything, where I can get all the quality and quantity I want out of my running, but also make sure I'm appropriately recovering my body because it's very intensive.
Hmm. So what's next? I mean, do you see yourself pursuing the marathon seriously? Do you have any Olympic trials aspirations? I know that your time was creeping closer to that qualifying mark.
Yeah, so the Olympic trials qualifier has gotten a lot faster, for lack of
Hmm.
better words,
Hmm.
since every year really. It's now at 2:16, which is 5 minutes away from what I've ran. So that's pretty crazy. But the good news is I have 3 whole years to go after it. So that's definitely like a long-term goal that I'm definitely have my eyes set on. But for now, Boston's definitely a one of those ones that I would like to click off. It's going to be interesting though, just because, like you kind of mentioned,
Yeah.
that environment is, I thought Bayshore was a lot and a little bit overwhelming. Boston will be just amplified tenfold. So,
But
but
yeah,
it's something you just have to do. I
you
mean,
do. It
yeah,
is the most incredible experience you can
yeah.
have as a runner. And I'm not trying to downplay anyone who's never done it to say, oh, you've never had a great running experience.
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely not.
for my perspective of doing other marathons, there is nothing that can prepare you just for the sheer enormity of the crowds and how ramped up they are. And
Yeah.
just the whole town embraces the culture of running. It is just incredible.
Yeah, I'm very excited to do that. So that'll be next year, but in the short term, I actually today just found out that I got accepted into the Detroit Marathon, which is
Nice.
October 19th. So that'll be kind of the next big race that's going to be scheduled on the calendar. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited to just build over the next couple months and, hopefully knock out, have another good experience and just chip off a little bit more time and learn more about the distance.
And that one's come a long way too. I
Yeah,
think
it
that's
really has.
become, it even sold out. So
It did.
to see
Yeah,
it kind of take on its own vibrancy and get, really popular is pretty cool.
yeah,
The world's only underwater mile because you go through
that's
the
true.
tunnel.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. I have to shout out the meet director actually. It was sold out. I didn't sign up for it until after Bayshore because I had never run a marathon before, so I
Hmm.
didn't really have a time or any credibility to enter myself in the ring. But after Bayshore, I reached out to the race director and asked him if I could get in, and he found an opening for me, and I just found out today. So I really owe him a lot. So that's going to be a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great race. You see a lot of cool parts of Detroit. Going over the bridge is really neat when the sun's coming up,
Yeah.
and Indian Village is really fun. They have a lot of fun like aid stations that the neighbors put out. They do put out some beer. I would not recommend drinking that in because I think they're towards the last 6 miles. So
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you know how to run a marathon, but
Bayshore
Just,
was the exact same way. There
uh-huh.
was guys dressed in Elvis costumes for whatever
Oh,
reason handing out glasses
okay.
of beer, and I was,
Okay.
yeah, they definitely motivated me. They were hyping me up, but
Hmm.
I didn't indulge in the beer, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that would be a race beverage of choice. Maybe post race, but
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. Well, have you ever thought about an ultra?
My friends that I did this marathon with are actually going to do a an ultra, and I would really like to do that
Hmm.
at some point. I just don't know when because it's
Yeah.
hard to like, I guess, balance training for a marathon and then training
Yeah.
because an ultra is just a
Oh,
completely
it's
separate
yeah.
beast. So
Yeah.
definitely down the road, I think for sure, but not in the foreseeable future as of right now.
Well, the nice thing about ultras, at least for the average Joe such as myself, I didn't worry about my pace. I just
Yes.
worried about the distance and getting time on my feet. And then
Yep.
you eat while you run, you learn how to do that. Those are all fun things to me. Just like the adventure of being out somewhere for hours on end, which is really cool. Um, when I trained marathon wise, that was more mile pace. I had to worry about
Exactly.
hitting a qualifying time and all that. So it was a little more pressure there. But as you age, your body is much more suited to running further versus fast. So that's why you see a lot of people continue in the ultra community, long into their years of running. So something to think about.
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. Like eventually things are gonna peak and you're not
Hmm.
gonna be able to just your body can't do it anymore. But there's new ways to challenge yourself to figure out how you can push yourself
Hmm.
and doing something different like that where it's not about necessarily how fast you run the mile, but it's how many miles you can
Yeah.
put on top of one another. And then there's things like eating mid-run, which I've never done, and just really being out there for hours on end, which
Hmm.
I think would maybe fit into my the approach that I already
Yeah.
have. But yeah, definitely something that I'm looking forward to down the road, which who knows when that'll be.
Yeah. Well, if you could advise a runner who is listening, who maybe is a high schooler, they're still working, through cross country track and eventually one day maybe want to try one, or an adult who is giving the marathon a thought, what would you say?
Pretty simple, just do it. Yeah, definitely do it. The hardest part for um I think would probably be just committing to actually doing the distance because I think a lot of people have aspirations to do something like that, like do something, whether it's a marathon or, it could be just something really simple like doing a first 5K. It's really just about committing to doing it. And, once you can get past that first hurdle of convincing yourself that you are able to do that, then it just continues to get easier. And then you fall in love with this, feeling that you're just pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself. And it's such a welcoming community that invites that kind of thing where, it's not super it's competitive, but it's not like you feel like you're lesser just because of your time or your ability. Everyone is so motivating to just push you to come into the running community. So, yeah, just do it. It's really going to be the best experience I think that you'll ever have. So, the sooner that you can get into it, I think it's going to really push you to be a better version of yourself in every facet of life.
Hmm. Agreed. And if you don't do a marathon, that's okay too.
Yep,
You're
absolutely.
still a runner. You don't have to do it.
Absolutely.
It is not for everyone.
Yeah,
It
it really isn't.
100% is not. And there's no shame in saying that.
No, yeah, we're probably in a honestly minority of people that I don't even know have somehow find enjoyment out of this crazy sport that just beats up your body like this. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, we forget that our perspective is very unique.
Yes. And quite honestly, I still would not consider myself a marathoner by like my preference or talent. I was definitely a mid distance girl. And
Hmm.
I still, to this day, I mean, I can't run fast, but I would much rather rip off a 400-meter repeat than ever go for a 15-mile run. So, yeah, it's okay if you aren't long distance minded. It's
Absolutely.
you're still a runner. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. All right. Well, to wrap up, here are some this or that questions. So, running in the rain or running in the heat?
I'd probably have to say rain because heat, I don't do well in the heat, so rain would just be much better.
All right. I think I know the answer after you talking about Bayshore, but you could surprise me. Crowded course with cheering spectators or lonesome scenic route?
I'd have to say lonesome scenic route,
Okay.
honestly. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, for yeah, it's I know I just talked about how exciting the cheering spectators and roaring crowd are, but I get overwhelmed pretty easily by that stuff. So I I just sometimes really enjoy most of the time actually just enjoy being able to be by myself and
Hmm.
take time
Agreed.
in my own head. Yeah.
When I did Chicago, I think I was at like mile 18 or 19, and it's loud the whole way. There's
Yes.
a lot of city comes out. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish that they would just stop yelling. I just wish it
Right.
was quiet.
Right.
And I had headphones in, so I could still block some of it out, but
That
it
is
got to a
crazy.
point where it was like noise overload. And I know that a lot of people need that. That helps them run. And
Oh,
I
absolutely.
remember thinking, I don't want to do this again because I think I just prefer a quiet road.
Yeah,
So,
just one of those things where you're like, I've done it now. I know what it's
yep.
like. I'd be
Yeah.
plenty content with not doing it again.
Yeah, I would like to do New York. I never got to do that one. I was registered. I made it in the lottery, and then I got pregnant with my third kid. So never did it, but I'm okay with that. If I don't, I don't. It's no biggie.
Okay.
So, all right, next, this or that, ice bath or foam roll?
I'm a big fan of the ice bath, so I'll go with that one.
Oh, no, no, not me. All right, gels or chews?
Gels. That's what I used in the marathon.
Mm-hmm. Morning or evening run?
Morning most of the time, but with getting adapted to a new working schedule, I've gotten more accustomed to evening runs. They're not my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so morning for sure, but I'm learning to be an evening runner.
Yeah. Do you sit a lot during the day? Is that part of your job? You're kind of stationary.
Yeah, I'm sitting at a desk a lot of the day,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just part of the job. But like I said, I try to get up to be cognizant to get up and just walk around a little bit so that way I'm
Yeah.
not stagnant for the entire day.
Yeah, I find during the school year, I'm always on my feet. I don't sit down a lot at my
Ooh,
desk. So running after school is hard. I'm
yes.
tired, but
Yes.
during the summer, I have to go run because I haven't moved enough. I feel like I sit way more in the summer just because I'm not at work. So yeah.
Either one or the other for you, it sounds like.
Yep, yep. All right, music or no music if you're racing?
No music.
Do they allow you to wear AirPods or anything if you're in an elite section of a race?
Ooh, if you're an elite, I
I
doubt
don't
it.
think they do.
I think they like ban it for technically everyone. They're like,
Yeah,
don't wear those, but then
yeah,
everyone ends up doing it. But if you're in
yeah,
like hey, we paid for you to get into this race and
yeah.
invited you to come here, then you're probably not wearing it. They probably don't allow it.
Yeah. Do you ever listen to music as you train?
No,
Oh,
yeah, never
okay.
got into that. Yeah,
Okay. I go back and forth. Sometimes I like to listen to music, and other times I just like to, kind of think in my own head and hear nature. It
for sure.
depends.
And do you carry like a phone with you when you do that or?
No, I have an Apple Watch,
Oh,
so
there
I
you
can
go.
have podcasts and songs on my watch. So, which I've tried to convince my husband to use because he still walks with his phone. Um, and I bought him an Apple Watch for Christmas, but you're gonna laugh at this. He still has an iPhone 8 and it doesn't support
Not compatible,
an
is it?
Apple Watch. So until he gets a new phone, no Apple Watch for him. So yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's funny. Yeah, I've never had a watch that has been like compatible with something like that. So it's always just been like I either run with my phone or I don't, and I
Hmm.
hate carrying stuff, so I just never ran with my phone.
Yeah, my daughter does. I feel like for her, I'm kind of okay with that because for safety reasons, I
I was gonna
like
say it's a little
her.
bit different of a situation
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. For a teenage girl, just on the safe side, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, one more question that wasn't scripted, but I'm just curious. Are there any pro runners that are kind of interesting to you that you like to follow or read up on and, just see what they're doing and up to?
Yeah, I follow the running world pretty closely. I've just kind of became like a running nerd and like to keep up with like the professional running scene. But um, one of the guys that I really do look up to is Grant Fisher. He's a Michigan
Mm-hmm.
guy and just got bronze in the Olympics in both the 5K and 10K. And one way that we're kind of connected in a way is his high school coach actually did a little bit of like mental coaching with me in high school. I worked with him privately on the side, and he was an incredible resource for me with just really navigating some of those, teenage things that you go through where you're really trying to figure out who you are, what excites you, and what are the things that drive you. And, he challenged me to think in a much different way. And I can see that with how Grant approaches things. And, I like to kind of just see those things pay off with the success that he's having. And from everything I've heard, he's just a really incredible person above all. So that's always what I've tried to prioritize, is just try and be a really good person. And yeah, so he'd probably be the guy that I would look up to the most and try and follow.
And did you see he just ran his mile PR?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy that
It
he's got that
is.
3:48 speed.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a road mile tomorrow, down in Brighton area with some friends. So I won't be running 3:48, but I'm curious to see how fast
Yeah.
these marathon legs can go.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool that he put himself out there outside of his comfort zone because
Oh
he had
yeah,
said, "Oh, I'm not a mile guy." And he knew he wouldn't win, but hey, try something new and see what happens. And I think he's pretty proud of it.
I would hope so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to be disappointed when you run that quick, but I guess I think he finished crazy enough, like ninth or eighth or
Yeah.
something in the
Well,
race.
he
So
beat Hobbs Kessler.
that was crazy. Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
believe that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody, you never know,
Yeah,
like the gold medalist in the 1500 didn't win. So
exactly. Yeah,
every
that's
day is
very
a different
true.
race.
This is very true.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you once again, Noah, taking time out of your day to talk with me and look forward to see what comes next for you. It's pretty exciting to think, gosh, we could see you on a big stage in the marathon.
Yeah, maybe. You just never really know. It's going to take it one day at a time from here. But yeah, I really appreciate you inviting me back on. It's always such a pleasure to be on this platform and have the opportunity to share a little bit about my journey. So thank you so much for having me back.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please share an episode to help spread the word about Blue Water Running's mission, which is to feature and celebrate the achievements of high school and collegiate cross-country and track and field athletes from our area. You can also subscribe and leave a review. You can find the Blue Water Running podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and any other major media player. You can also ask your smart speaker to play the Blue Water Running podcast. You can follow Blue Water Running on Instagram, X, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, along with athlete and meet reports and photography on the website at bluewaterrunning.org. Coverage of Blue Water Running is sponsored in part by Elite Feet of Port Huron. If you need running shoes, spikes, or apparel, they have a friendly and knowledgeable staff to help you find the right fit, and they've spent years supporting local athletes here in the Blue Water area. They're located at 327 Huron Ave in downtown Port Huron. Verlinde Insurance, located in Richmond, Michigan, is also a supporter of coverage on Blue Water Running. Training as an athlete teaches you resilience and preparation. Apply those lessons to your life with your insurance plans and be ready with anything with them by your side.